Welcome back to the How the Race Was Won podcast. I'm Dan Cash, and it's the Poland show, because a Polish person just won the Tour de France Femmes, and also the Tour of Poland happened. Also the Vuelta, so it's actually maybe more of like a Poland, France, Spain show. Yeah, I didn't have a good one for that. Maybe if Kwiatkowski had won something.
Portugal is like the Poland of the Iberian Peninsula.
Maybe is it?
I have no idea.
It begins with a P. I don't really know what the. Anyway, Spain, Portugal, France, Poland. Those are the places that we're going to be focused on today's show of the How the Race Was Won podcast. We're going to talk about the Tour de France Femmes, which, yes, we normally leave a lot of the analysis to Wheel Talk, but I think there is enough to go around with this fantastic Tour de France Femmes we just got to watch. It's also the Tour de France, so it bears plenty of analysis, I think. We're going to talk about the first two stages of the Vuelta a España. That's what has happened thus far as of recording time. Not too much, but there were some things to talk about the first 2 days, and I think we're going to have some storylines that we can already focus on. And we'll talk a little bit about the Tour of Poland. We're not going to talk a ton about the Tour of Poland, but there were some takeaways from that race that are worthy of talking about. Had we not had two Grand Tours going on at once, Poland might get a bit more love from us. And I normally do care about the Tour of Poland more than most, probably, because, as you know, if you listen to this podcast, we are serious folk here. We're serious about bike racing.
Poland has always been kind of cool. They do some cool and some weird stuff, as they did it this year too. It was really hard to find footage for
yes.
Poland, for a variety of reasons.
But if you do ever tune in, you're treated to those awesome giant balloon things on
sponsor
the side
balloons,
of the road every year.
which have been there, I think, as long as the race has existed. I remember watching,
as long as I've known it,
like a 180 pixel feed in 2005, just on their website,
and they were there,
and they were very blurry sponsor balloons.
All right, let's talk Femme first. That's the one that ended today on recording day, and that is also a Tour de France. So that, to me, is the one that we should talk about first. What a day it was. What a week it was. The race did not pan out exactly like it was expected to. And
in a good way.
In a way.
As a viewer, as a fan of suspense and bike racing.
Drama perspective,
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, no question there. I'm on board with that. I certainly feel for the rider who was the favorite, who crashed and who didn't win, and I think she would have otherwise, but she didn't, and that's bike racing. What is the headline from the Tour de France Femmes?
Why can't all Tours de France be this good? I feel like
it was the closest tour ever.
Yeah.
So
I do think that's a little silly, but it is the closest Tour de France ever.
Why?
As a percent of overall race, it is not the closest, but
I see what you're. Okay.
It is. It was very close. It delivered everything it needed to deliver in a very tight package.
Literally the time gap was the smallest,
yes.
But not okay. That is true. But okay. Either way, the time gap was quite small. Why was the time? What are the various factors that led to the time gap? Let me rephrase this. How was the race won?
The race was won by Kasia Niewiadoma not having her lead completely erased by Demi Vollering on the final day of racing. That's a really good way of putting it, actually. I mean, as Demi herself, so we will get into this, obviously, but as Demi herself put it, there are a lot of ifs that you could apply to this race. And I think a lot of people who maybe don't or haven't raced bikes or haven't even thought of the practical things that happen in a bike race where bodies are located and how they can help teammates out. To them, there is one mistake or one if here, and I disagree. I think there are lots and lots and lots of ifs, and I think it's really silly how over-focused on the post-crash if so many people have become.
I'm pretty focused on that, so I'm happy to get into that.
Okay, yeah okay.
All right, so that's the big thing here, but maybe just the basics of it, for those who maybe need a reminder. Kasia Niewiadoma was behind. Demi Vollering, after the time trial she won, by the way, was sitting quite comfortably for where we were in the race at the time on the top of the GC leaderboard. And then on stage 5, what was she, 5K from the line?
It was that's about 6.5K from the line, but It was not a 6.5K like flat run in with a pack grouped up. It was a very fast descent. It was downhill almost all the way to the line with a little rise at the end, or like a little rise about 1 kilometer, just before 1 kilometer. So you have a huge pack of people, but they are fully strung out. So Vollering isn't necessarily in bad position, but after the stage, Kane and SRAM, the team that Kasia Niewiadoma rides for, was very specific that they got right to the front right there because they knew it was going to be sketchy and they didn't want to leave anything to chance. And Vollering was like 10th wheel, maybe. And
yeah, not as you said, not bad position, but not good enough.
She didn't do anything wrong. The riders around her didn't really do anything wrong. There was somebody who overshot the corner, and you had kind of a cascading of breaks until there wasn't enough time to slow down. And you did have Lorena Wiebes, her teammate, bump into her and knock her down. And I think this is where the factual agreement, this is where the agreement between me and the crash ifers ends, right? Like, we all agree, Lorena Wiebes ran into Demi Vollering. Vollering went down. But having been taken out by teammates and having taken out teammates, you don't really know. You can be pretty sure. I think the way Wiebes' hip ran into Vollering's handlebars, she could be pretty certain that Demi went down. But the thing you do when you are coming into a crash this fast with a corner, that Wiebes was like not lined up to get around because she was on the brakes, which is hard, makes it hard to steer the bike. She's not going to look back and be like, oh, is Demi crashed? Number one, that's crazy. I think it is possible, at least, that she could have come out of the crash like, oh, I think I might have crashed Demi, slowed down, looked behind her, seen Demi on the ground, and then gotten off the bike. And we're still talking a distance of 200 meters. And it's not like you can get up and walk all the way back to Demi, right? She's got to kind of hang out there, at least for a little bit. So Demi went down in this crash very hard, fell directly on her hip, like one of the hardest ways you can fall. She didn't slide, she didn't roll. It took her a long time to even get back up. Took her a long time to get back on the bike, like a minute before she's on the bike and pedaling again. You know, I guess there is a universe where she gets back on the bike, she starts pedaling, she goes slowly, but Wiebes is right there, gets in front of her, like talks to her, they get up to speed, they get it to Misha Bredewald, who's called back from the break, and somewhere in there is 4 seconds of saving, but it's not a very long distance. I haven't done the full napkin math on it, but I think they would have to go very, very fast, possibly faster than could reasonably be expected based on the amount of time that Demi took to get going full speed again.
Okay, so before we get into this, because I think we should get into this, we should just, the facts are then, okay, she comes into the finish line with enough of a gap that Niewiadoma takes over the race lead, and then despite
a lot of
Vollering's
people,
best efforts,
she's well down in the standings. She's down in the teens
way down
on
in the
GC.
standings, yeah. And then Vollering ends up winning the final stage, but not by enough of a margin to claw back to the top of the standings. She got away with Paulina Royackers, and they had a heck of a ride off the front. Vollering won the stage.
Oh, they did. I don't want to be too mean to Royackers because I think she rode really smart. I think she rode really well. Vollering did most of the work.
Royackers, I thought, rode. Yeah, I mean, I don't really fault Royackers for the way that she rode. Anyway, Vollering wins the stage. Kasia Niewiadoma holds on to the yellow jersey by 4 seconds.
Yep.
When bonus seconds and everything are accounted for. And therefore Niewiadoma is your champion at the Tour de France Femmes. And Vollering 2 stages won, including this Alpe d'Huez stage, which any other rider, any other circumstances, if you win on the Alpe d'Huez, the final stage of the Tour de France, you're going to be ecstatic. Obviously not very... not the same situation for Demi Vollering, who felt like she was strong enough to win. Okay, so that's the facts. That's what happened. It's important context. I think you can find 4 seconds over those 5K if Lorena Wiebes does, in fact, stop and wait. And I think that is what happens with most teams.
I don't think so at all. I think you are the best sprinter in the world. It is 6K to go. Everything is going fast. You have every reason to believe that your only objective on this day is to win the sprint. You are not...
I don't think you have every reason. I think you have, some reasons.
You think at the team meeting, they're like, hey, Wiebes, we're working for you today. You know, we think that's a great finish for you, but just in case anything happens to Vollering, you need to stop.
Yeah, I think so.
Even if you're not sure, even if you're not sure, you need to pull out of that pace line that you will not be able to get back into and look behind you and see if Vollering is down.
That's the thing. I think if Blanca Vash after the stage won the stage. So there were 2 days in this race that were very bittersweet for SDWorx because they won the stage. The way that I phrase it in the story that I wrote, they won the battle, but they lost the war. So in this situation, Vash won the stage. Great for SDWorx. Everything else was bad for SDWorx because Vollering lost her lead. In that instance, specifically Vash, she said her radio was not working. Fine. If that's true, fine.
I think it's 100% true because there's video of her crossing the line and getting really sad when she hears that Vollering crashed and lost the lead.
She discovers, I have not heard Vibus give that excuse. I have not heard that at all. I think Danny Stam or whoever is in the car is well within their rights to go onto the radio and say, 1, Vash is ahead, and you are not going to win this sprint. 2, this is the yellow jersey of the Tour de France. Okay, so those two things could have happened, and they didn't.
I hear you say that. And I'm gonna start with the first thing, which is Danny Stam is going to get on the radio. At what point does Danny Stam know that Wiebes is down? Right? Do they have? I don't think they have.
That Vollering, you mean?
Sorry, yes. At what point does Danny Stam know that Vollering's on the ground?
Yeah,
there's no cameras, there's no TVs in the car anymore, so there's going to be some lag there.
Gap, yeah.
The radio will go. Misha Bredewald, whose radio was working, says that it took her a long time to figure out that Vollering was down, because so much chatter on the radio, didn't know what was happening. So. I think you have to factor in a lot of delay there. That's Wiebes still further down the road that we're talking about. And you say, Vash was up the road, she was going to win. How much do you think Vash was up the road by? How much separation do you think there was between the Vash group and the Wiebes group?
Yeah, I guess it depends on when we're talking, right?
Because Puck Pieterse has Strava flybys turned on, I can tell you almost exactly how far it was, and it was 3 seconds until they got to a roundabout. And you can actually see this in the race footage where Chloe Dygert gets put on the front by Niewiadoma, being like, no mercy, smash this. Chloe Dygert, by the way, gold medalist in the 4K team pursuit, I believe. I think it's 4K.
Yeah. Gold medalist in smashing it.
Gold medalist in smashing it. And in the breakaway with her is another member of the gold medalist in smashing it team. So, this is a very, very difficult group to catch that is putting time into Vollering, who is still on the ground, summoning the will through the clearly agonizing pain to get back on her feet and get back on the bike. I don't think it's reasonable for Danny Stam to look at this 3-second gap between this small group and this bigger Wiebes group and say, oh, you know what? That gap's not coming back. Vash will win the stage if she can. And we're definitely going to pull Wiebes, who will absolutely 100% win the stage if these two things come back together.
If it's a sprint, right.
So
I see what you're saying. I don't know that I agree. I think there is a point. I think there's enough time here between it has now become clear that Vash is going to contest the win. It's not going to be a sprint.
Can you put a number on that? At what km to go?
Even if it's 2K to go, I think you can find 4 seconds in there with Wiebes going all out at the front.
Wiebes is 7 seconds, 8 seconds behind the Vash group now. So she is at 2K to go plus 8 seconds. Vollering is still way, way, way back on the race course. How is Wiebes going to get there to help? Do you see what I'm saying?
No, that's what I'm saying. I think if this is most other teams, I think they literally just stop and wait. And that, if it, at the Tour de France, and here's the other thing.
How many times did you see Mark Cavendish stop and wait for Bradley Wiggins in the Tour de France, right?
Well, yeah, but Matt, Mark Cavendish...
On a sprint stage, for crying out loud.
Mark Cavendish left that team.
Okay, pick any sprinter
so that he wouldn't have to worry
on any
about that.
GC team. When has it ever happened in the men's Tour de France?
Well, I think Wout van Aert would do it.
Wout van Aert would do it because Wout van Aert is a mensch, all right? Wout van Aert would do whatever it took to do right by his teammates.
Here's the other thing. So I think you make a fine point. I think there are reasons why Lorena Wiebes doesn't stop.
Oh, I'm not even done. I have more to talk about.
She in the Dutch press, Vollering, after this whole thing went down, Vollering talked about how she didn't think it was fair for people to be criticizing Wiebes. Vollering being a good teammate, having her teammates back, even if her teammates didn't have her back. I think even if there are reasons to do this, and there are, at the end of the day, Wiebes sprinted to 8th. That group didn't contest the win. So even if you have reasons to do it, it's still a mistake.
With 2020 hindsight, they were able. You saying it's a mistake?
Yes, absolutely. This is with hindsight. This is here's my analogy.
The decision in the moment based on the best available data.
No, I know.
You emotionally connect with the decision, not the outcome.
That I think you can criticize the decision and say clearly you were wrong.
Well, you can say. I think it is absurd. It contradicts every ounce of mediocre Cat 3 bike racing experience I have to think that at any point in the run into a finale would a sprinter so much as slow down and check behind them. Because that's 5-6 spaces, right? Like, that is ground that is going to be really hard to make up on the remaining course without burning matches you need for the sprint. And Wiebes, as far as Wiebes knows, there is another teammate back with Vollering in Niamh Fisher-Black, right? Niamh Fisher-Black is right there, went down in the same crash. What happened to her was her bike broke. She was trying to fix it. She's kind of walking past Vollering, and a mechanic from, I think, a different team pushes her, and it looks from the overhead shot like she's riding past Vollering, but you can clearly see she's looking over, probably saying something. She gets pushed out of frame, and then a couple minutes later, you see her on the side of the road with a broken bike, like standing there once Vollering gets back on and it rides off. So one of the things people have said is like, oh, it never happened in the men's tour because they would always have like, somebody with the jersey at all times. And like SDWorx had that. There are fewer starters per team at the women's GDF.
Right. Yeah.
And a lot of them had, this was a deceptively hard day, as Charlotte Cole mentioned in the post-race interview. So it was constantly undulating. SDWorx had burned through a lot of other riders. At that moment in time, they had 2 riders on the front trying to make the race faster. Like, this was a situation where you had one rider and that's it with the jersey, and they got caught in the crash and their bike was broken. There was nothing they could do.
It wasn't like they had a whole contingent for sure.
I think if you saved your game at 7K to go, you could, with knowing that this crash was going to happen, you could orchestrate some situation after you reloaded your save where you have Wiebes immediately ready, and maybe you get back those 4 seconds. Maybe you get back those 4 seconds. But I just don't think that's a reasonable scenario, and I think it's ludicrous to expect it given the situation the race was in.
I hear what you're saying. I think calling it ludicrous to expect that is just a step too far. I think it's an outcome that this team, being the best team in the world for 10 years, could have thought about. I don't know. To me, it's not. I feel like a lot of the commenters on the internet are basically saying SDWorx did Demi Vollering dirty. I don't know. That to me that's a bridge too far. I think that's yeah. I do think that it is possible that they could have saved this race. However, this is, I am going to kind of maybe move it on a little bit here, but this is only one area in which this could have changed. There were, right. And as Vollering said in her really awesome, really great post-race quote, there were a lot of different things, like small things she could have changed, anybody could have changed, that she could have done differently. And the flip side of that is, there are a lot of things that Kasia Niewiadoma did right, and that her team did right. I feel bad for Kasia Niewiadoma and for Canyon Thread, because the one thing I'll say about Demi Vollering and her post-race quotes was that she was very focused on herself and the things that she didn't do or didn't. And like at the end of the day, I do believe that she wins this race if she hadn't crashed. But she did crash, and Kasia Niewiadoma didn't crash. Nope. And Kasia Niewiadoma and team did everything right.
She took full advantage of it. I think she had a weak hand as far as her team goes, especially kind of like they are not a team that is used to this team leadership stuff. And it's interesting. I agree that Vollering was very self-focused in her assessments, but I think there was some excellent kind of play between the two in the press after stage 7. A lot of like Kasia being like, oh, I think Demi was confused. She attacked really early. And a lot of Demi being like, well, I think Kasia is really insecure with the lead right now. That's why she's doing so much. I thought that was really cool. But I thought Kasia and her team played really like, they played what was a tough hand about as well as they could, right? And the finale of this race was so hard. SDWorx really tried a couple of times to blow that stage up, kind of succeeded, but also succeeded in a way that really made it a Kasia Niewiadoma kind of race, right? You ended up with this seesaw battle going up Alpe d'Huez between Kasia and Demi. Kasia had some help. Demi had a little bit of help, but it really was 2 women riding uphill hard in a time gap. There wasn't a lot of ways where Kasia could just do the wrong thing because she felt like it at the moment and other people would profit from it. There were only 2 riders with her. They both helped out. Not, they didn't do a majority of the work, but they did a lot of work. And it was guts and feels and vibes and pedaling hard. There wasn't a whole lot of craft to it. And that is, I think, where Kasia is going to be strongest against Demi. Even though I think we saw today, Demi's the stronger rider. But the situation today is really like Kasia was able to make it a Kasia kind of race and came through and took the victory.
Yeah, and it at the end of the day, it matters that. Okay, yeah. So I think Vollering crashing is the reason she lost the race, and I think that matters if you're predicting the future. If you're trying to say, well, who's the favorite for next year? I think it's still Demi Vollering by a mile. But it doesn't matter for this year. It doesn't take anything away from Niewiadoma's victory. She won fair and square and did everything she needed to do, and that's with there being some earlier stages where she came close to wins, didn't make it happen. There are multiple instances where you're watching and thinking, oh no, there she goes, there she's doing it again. But at the end of the day, she won the whole race.
That's what I'm saying is those things that she does are only a weakness in a normal racing situation. And this turned into an abnormal one, and she was able to take full advantage. A lot of stuff went her way, right? She had a lot of Lucinda Brand just being incredibly strong on the Valley Road, taking most of Demi's gap from the descent away. But well, not most of.
And Royaker's not really working with Vollering was really good for.
Like let's say Realini gets away with Vollering instead of Royaker's, like game over, right?
Yeah, but that's not what happened.
Nope, didn't work out that way.
Race, and at the end of the day, she's the winner, and that she's very deserving of all the plaudits she's going to get.
I don't think anyone is saying otherwise. You know, I think there may be some like hardcore Demi fans out there being like, "This is kind of garbage," but like. There's a lot of racing between stage 5 and the end of this tour.
Yeah, and that's true.
Kasia, she didn't make the decisions I would make, but she won the race, and she won it convincingly. So
okay, let's say that if Demi had crashed out, right, then it's a whole different conversation. But she was still in the race, came really close. It ended up being an awesome battle, and Niewiadoma comes out on top. And I think just across the board, it was a thrill to watch. And I think it says so much about both of these racers and the way they race. And it was just it was a really good bike race. And for the second, when did we talk about this last? Oh, it was the Olympics. Another instance of like, oh yeah, this is why I love bike racing. Not the crashes, but the fact that it's not always the clear and obvious best athlete. As a commenter on the story I wrote about Vollering today said something about her being the best athlete, and they don't always win in cycling. You know, they do in marathon. They don't in cycling though.
I mean, there's a little bit of tactics in marathon.
Okay, a little bit. Sure. There's a reason I watch 1,000 hours of bike racing every year, and all right. So, Tour de France Femmes, big success, very entertaining race. Yeah,
good job. They gotta get some sort of special train from Rotterdam to Alp, because they did have good crowds on Alp, but it wasn't the amplitude, it was the frequency, right? They were just It wasn't until you got to like the last couple corners where the crowds were up and rowdy, and I think we need to fill that in.
That's a great segue for the next topic, which is the Vuelta, because the crowds of the Vuelta today were over the top. Before I do that, though, go listen to Wheel Talk. All of the dailies have been awesome. The number of riders in the very race that you get to hear from when you listen to the Tour dailies from Wheel Talk, pretty awesome. And obviously, they're going to talk plenty about everything that happened today over the course of the week, all that good stuff. They're going to go way more in depth than we have here. Head over to Wheel Talk for more on the Tour de France Femmes. Avec Swift. Let's take a break, and we will talk Vuelta stages 1 and 2 when we get back. Okay, 2 days into the Vuelta, do you have a headline so far?
No, I mean, I almost feel like Visma was leading out Wout for the red jersey and not the stage win today, because they just parked on the front with Kaden Groves parked on Wout, and I was like, well, there's really only one way this ends.
Yeah, it was definitely it was like, let's get Wout over the line safely and close to the front. So rewinding, there was a time trial first. And we should focus. Honestly, the entire show should be about this, because an American won the time trial. So we should be playing the national
gunning
anthem.
For that job at NBC, huh?
Yes, that's Brandon McNulty. Congrats to the national time trial champion, getting to wear the stars and stripes and take them to victory in the opening TT. So Brandon McNulty, I feel like I want to give him his flowers, because the guy is a two-time Grand Tour stage winner. He's won several World Tour races as well. And I feel like sort of like I sometimes say about Remco, he's kind of been defined at this point in his career more by what he's not than what he has done. And you kind of got this a little bit with Talansky and Van Garderen and the sort of previous generation of good Americans who had some GC hype around them. With Brandon McNulty, there was a lot of this excitement that he could be a Grand Tour star. He hasn't really panned out as a Grand Tour GC guy. He's been a great teammate. And I just think let's give the guy his flowers. He's a winner. He wins races. He's gotten some big wins at Grand Tours, more so than the vast majority of American men. And so let's just stop focusing on the fact that he's not as good of a climber as people thought he might one day be, and give him credit for beating a pretty good time trial field at this Vuelta. Stefan Kung was there, Wout van Aert was there, and Josh Tarling. He beat all of them. He also beat Matthias Vacek, who I had not expected to be in the top 3. Good on you, Matthias Vacek, and I'm sorry that Brandon McNulty, on behalf of America, I'm sorry that Brandon McNulty beat you. But good on you, Brandon McNulty. Stage 2.
I was gonna say I liked how Vacek went for some of the point sprints the next day. Oh, that was cool.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like people don't really talk about the Vuelta points jersey.
Well, he's not normally up there. So like,
yeah, true.
You got to take your shots when you got the viewfinder lined up, right? So
yes, yeah. And ultimately the winner of stage 2, the second day in Portugal, Kaden Groves. Now, the sprint, to me, I feel like it creates a storyline or a narrative that I'm excited to follow over the next 3 weeks, because Kaden Groves beating Van Aert in a sprint where Van Aert was slightly, but not heavily, but slightly favored. To me, it tells me one of two things. And I think we're going to find out maybe over the next 3 weeks which of these two is true. Either Kaden Groves is faster than I was giving him credit for being, or Wout van Aert is slower than I thought he was. One of those two things must be true. Because in the sprint, Groves took a pretty clear win. He was positioned very well, but I also think that he looked faster. And I kind of expect Van Aert to be the faster one in the Groves v Van Aert battle.
I don't know if I do. I feel like Van Aert is still like, he can sprint. I don't know if he's a sprinter. He's kind of a classics guy at heart with a lot of versatility. We've seen him play Mountain Domestique when the casting requires.
All those things are true, but that doesn't mean he's not like.
And Kaden Groves won a lot of sprints in Australia this January. Like very. I mean,
that is also true, and maybe this is just me continuing a trend. We should fess up. I feel like we kind of disregard some of the results.
I feel like I'm the biggest offender, because every time you're like, hey, what about this? And I'm like, it's February. Like, it's cross season. Well,
let's just, both of us then. What's our culpa? I know it begins with an N. Anyway, it's our fault. Sorry, TDU fans.
No stare.
Maybe I should give Kaden Groves. There we go.
No stare culpa.
Yep. So sorry about that, TDU fans, and hopefully we'll get more opportunities to see these guys go head-to-head. By the time you're listening to this, they could have already gone head-to-head again, because Stage 3 looks like a potential sprint battle. We're going to talk about what's coming up at the Vuelta at the end of the show. One other race we're going to talk about that was won already before we do that, Poland. Tour of Poland, the other World Tour race going on this week. Busy week of World Tour.
Kind of overlapped exactly with the Tour de France Femmes.
Yeah, I feel like every year they're in this tricky timing position, and this year even more so. And yet, at the end of the day, we got some pretty cool stage battles, and the overall race winner, not just some guy.
We should talk about that, but
let's talk about it. How was the race won, or at least what was the headline? I don't know. What are you going to tell me? What's on your mind?
Jonas Vingegaard backs his doubtlessly tiny, modest, and efficient Danish pickup truck into a GC win.
He did kind of back into it. That's a good way. Yeah.
It was weird. And I kept expecting him to not win the race, because there wasn't really a big GC day, right?
That's the thing. There wasn't a big mountain stage.
Stage 1 had an uphill finish that was in a very Poland way, not like Polish joke sort of way, but Tour of Poland sort of way. They just sort of kept going, and there were two guys off the front that kept starting and stopping, and eventually Thibaut Nys was like, forget all you, and won by 3 seconds. And then there was a TT where there was an Astana van in front of Tim Wellens for a bit, and he won by 9 seconds. Probably didn't get 9 seconds worth of Astana van, but Vingegaard was in second there, and with, I think, 9 seconds, 13 seconds, something like that over the next person. And then we had a bunch of sprints and a bunch of kind of small group finishes, and the bonus seconds were spread out enough between Tim Merlier and Thibaut Naes and Olaf Koy that nobody caught Vingegaard, and he won the overall.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any of the sprinters were going to get. At the end of the day, because of that one hilly day, none of the sprinters
That's
were really
true.
that close.
They did fall off a bunch on that.
But it was the TT that basically decided the race. And that's unusual for Poland, where they actually usually do go up into the mountains, sort of in the south of the country sometimes. Not sometimes, quite frequently. I mean, Rafał Majka has quite a history of like doing well in these stages. And yeah, this year was all about this TT, and it's kind of, and it was that and stay safe.
Yeah.
And because of the fact that Vingegaard kind of mostly just needed to do well on the TT and on that one hilly stage and then just stay safe, Visma was also able to focus its efforts a little bit on the sprints as well. And if it's not the Tour de France, and if you've already won the Tour de France with your Jonas Vingegaard, then I'm maybe a little bit more on board with trying to spread your resources around like they did at this race. Lest I be, I'm aware that 20 minutes ago I was talking about how SDWorx should have gone all in for the GC. But at the Tour of Poland, Visma was able to win some stages with Olaf Koy, in addition to the overall that Jonas Vingegaard won. First of all, last note on Vingegaard, who did win the overall and deserves his credit for that. I don't think I learned anything about Jonas Vingegaard.
Yeah.
Like, of course, Vingegaard is going to win the Tour of Poland if he tries to win the Tour of Poland. That should happen. However, I'd like to think, or maybe it's true that Vingegaard learned something about himself. I mean, this seems like a confidence boosting. Okay, I am Jonas Vingegaard. I can do this.
I believe last week I was skeptical he would even start the race because of how poorly he did at San Sebastian, and I don't know that he necessarily looked better here, but it was just the effort that he put in, that he had to put in, like wasn't at the same level, and he didn't screw up. He did pretty good. He didn't win any stages, but like he won the overall, and that has to feel pretty good after getting dropped basically as soon as the cameras turned on the week prior.
At San Sebastian, yeah. And then, Koy, I want to talk about how Koy this year, it's sort of been an up and down year for him, but at the Tour of Poland, I thought first of all, the field of the Tour of Poland, the sprints was not nothing. Like there were some talented sprinters at the Tour of Poland.
Tim Merlier got out there. And
Jordi Meus was there. Sam Bennett, obviously not the Sam Bennett of years past, but he's a pretty good rider.
We saw some Pedersen.
We saw some Pedersen before he abandoned the race. So there were some real, actual big names for the sprints. And I thought Olaf Koy did a great job of following the wheels, surfing wheels when needed. Did so to win stage 4, did so again to win stage 7, the last day in Krakow. Great job from Olaf Koy, who I feel like he's kind of back on track, and I'm sure he's happy to have done this at the Tour of Poland, because if you leave the Giro, like a week and a half in, and then you don't go to the Tour or the Vuelta, you kind of got to do well in those 1 week races, because that's kind of all you got. So good on you, Olaf Koy. Lastly, Thibaut Naes, man, what he was like head and shoulders above the field on some of these finishes. So I think Little Trek has a real talent on their hands.
Stage 3 was effectively a cyclocross finish, right? There were steep uphills. There were, within the last like 250 meters, some mandatory no pedaling 90-degree turns. Like the barriers were roughly 2 meters apart. It was a good finish for Thibaut Naes, but I agree. He's definitely developing into. It reminds me a lot of Dan Martin. This has just 700 meters of effort that the rest of the peloton doesn't have, and as long as he can get separation or a sufficiently steep grade, we may see him winning stages and races at will, where the finish conditions allow for the next couple of years.
And keep in mind, we have been hearing about him for so long because of his talent as a junior and under 23, and the fact that his dad is legendary cyclocross racer Sven Nys, but he's 21. He's still a kid. So this is, I mean, if you're Little Trek, you could have years of this kind of talent ahead of you. And he has shown this year with what he won stages in Romandy and Swiss. Now he's won 3 stages at the Tour of Poland. somehow didn't win the points jersey. Whatever. Yeah. So good on you, Thibaut Ness. I guess, I mean, I'm not trying to throw shade at Diego Ulissi, who did win the points jersey, but I just feel like if you win 3 stages. Anyway.
It's not the win 3 stages jersey, Dane. It's the points jersey.
Let's talk about what's ahead at the Vuelta before we close the show. We got, are
they going to go to Spain, or is it just going to be Portugal this year?
They are going to Spain. By the time you're listening to this podcast, They will be on their way to Spain because they have one more day in Portugal as of recording time. And that, by the time you're listening, that will have already happened. Castelo Branco, the finish on stage 3 looks like a sprinter day. And then, because it's the Vuelta, I say that, but I guess the Tour went up to Galibier on stage 4 this year. You got a mountain finish on stage 4 in Spain already. Very exciting. There are a handful of other sprinter-friendly days, but then it's basically every other stage other than one more like very flat sprint stage are like punch yours all the way, at least, if not climber. And the first week, quote unquote, ends with a really cool day in Granada, which they will go over this climb that gets up to, well, the average is like 9%, the Alto de Asayanas. That's going to be steep enough to cause some GC gaps. And so we're going to get to see, is Sepp Kuss able to match up against Roglic and the UAE juggernaut?
Is Sepp Kuss elite?
Is Sepp Kuss elite? Is Joao Almeida going to be climbing the way that he's going to need to if he time trialed in the meh way that he did on the opening stage? I should have mentioned this in the TT. I thought he was just kind of underwhelming in that TT, and maybe it's because he's just focused all in on the climbs this year. Or maybe he actually underperforms when the team gives him leadership roles. One of the two. We'll see. All that to look forward to over the next few days. And we will have plenty more, obviously. As the Vuelta continues around the league, you also have the Bretagne Classic coming up. Usually a pretty fun race. And Mark Hirschi will be there to continue his rise to the top of the rankings. He's currently, I guess after Vingegaard won Poland, Hirschi dropped a spot, but he's on Pro Cycling Stats. The 4th ranked rider in the world is Mark Hirschi, and I think that's really fun. So we'll have that. We'll have more Vuelta talk coming up. Hope you had time to watch the races, and hope you have time to watch all of those that are coming up so that you'll be, ready to talk about them with us in a week. Until then, I'm Dan Cash, and who are you? What was this?
I'm Cosmo Catalano, and that was the How the Race Was Won podcast.